It's time for Weekly Word, UT Martin's public affairs program. Weekly Word brings you in-depth interviews with the people that impact your campus and community, along with upcoming campus events. Now, here with this week's guest is the host of Weekly Word, Bonita Evans.
Welcome to another edition of Weekly Word. My guest this week is the new UT System President, Dr. Joe DiPietro. So you've been on the job for 3 months now. How's it going?
Really well.
Are you enjoying it?
I love it. I love it.
So
I really do.
What's been your biggest challenge so far in the 3 months that you've... The
biggest challenge? Scope of this job compared to every other one I've had. I mean, it's a system-wide job. It resides all over the state. There's lots of stuff to get up to speed on, lots of stuff to learn. One of the things I've always loved about changing jobs and feel fortunate about is the fact that you have to learn a lot more. There have been moments when I feel like I'm drinking out of a fire hose learning, but then there are moments when I wake up and say to myself, if you really think you're drinking out of a fire hose, think about if you hadn't been here 5 years and the other job as chance for ag and have a feel for what it's about. I mean, when people say UT Martin, I know where it's at and I know what it looks like. And I know what it's about. So that's probably the biggest challenge, is just the volume of information coming at you each day.
As UT Martin has grown so much in the past few years, and I know a lot of the system schools has, but for a small community college, what does that say about UT Martin?
Well, it says you have a real quality product here that makes people want to come here, that it's kind of training that appeals to a larger and larger segment of the population, and there are people who want to stay closer to a region of the state that are really attracted to Martin. I think it's also about what the experience is like on campus. It's positive and people talk, in this business it's a lot, in some ways it's like the restaurant business. You have a good day or two in the restaurant business, and it can build your business. If you have a bad day, it hurts it. In education, it's the same way. If you're delivering a quality product, students talk to other students who are thinking about where to go to the university, and I think it says a lot of good things about the place, its faculty and staff and leadership.
Recently, during his State of the State address, Governor Haslam praised the UT system about going ahead and cutting when they needed to cut. Do you foresee any more cuts coming our way?
Well, we do know this much. We've been through, in my experience, and I've been around places like this university and universities now almost 3.5 decades. I've never seen anything like we've been through in the last 3 years. Unprecedented. But that said, the economy's been unprecedented in my experience in my lifetime. So I think that the key is we are ready for July, and we do know that the governor's proposed, and we'll see what the legislature does, an additional cut for higher education of 2%. But we were told earlier this year, this fiscal year we're in right now, to be ready the next one for a 1, 2, or 3% additional state cut. We've prepared for that too. The budget is a excellent budget given the circumstances we're in, because it also includes a pay increase of 1.6%. The caveat is, as proposed by the governor right now, we need the legislature to act.
So how much more can we take before you start cutting jobs?
Well, I worry a lot about people because of who I am. So when we started to have the downturn when I was working with the Institute of Agriculture in the budget, we were very worried that we would have to lay off large number of people. And system-wide, the prediction when we started to have the downturn before stimulus money came back, we would be losing 600 positions. Come July, based on what I know right now, we'll be far fewer than 50 across the entire University of Tennessee system. So I don't look for a lot of additional people cuts. We've done it with skill and grace. I would hope that we've gotten to where we need to go on that count.
Going on that, state employees are getting a raise this year, and it's something that I know here that people are really excited about. Right. Is there any outlook that maybe they'll get one again next year, possibly?
I don't know about next year. I think we need to concentrate on this year. What everybody needs to realize is, one, the governor has proposed a budget that includes a 1.6% raise for state employees, and it includes the university. We're grateful for that. Again, the legislature will have to concur with that and in their wisdom decide whether to agree with that recommendation. In addition, we've continued to say to elected officials, we would like the flexibility within our system to work with the chancellor at Martin and all the other chancellors in figuring out what we might be able to do additionally. And our business people are doing that now, trying to figure out what we might be able to do additionally in the upcoming year, which would be starting in July.
So are we looking at a raise in tuition this year?
I think that the key on that one is that unfortunately we're in a situation where in order to maintain our quality, we will have to ask the families and students involved with our programs to pay more for their education. There aren't a lot of discretionary areas in the state's budget. Unfortunately, higher ed is one of those. And in order to maintain our quality, we're at a point where we're no longer talking about fat. We're not talking about muscle. We're down to bone. So, that's the unfortunate circumstances. I would promise you that all of us collectively will be as reasonable as we possibly can as we weigh that decision. We've not made any firm decisions yet.
I know with the graduation retentions and the requirements coming up that we have to have so much percentage for graduation retentions. What are we doing to ensure that at all the campuses in the system?
One, it's very, very important that everybody realize who are managing our academic programs, that there are teeth in the new Complete College Act that will reward programs that shorten graduation timeframes. So the things that are being proposed at all the campuses in that regard include better advising, stronger advising, intervention with students who are at risk, letting students know when they jump on board that we have an expectation that you'll be looking at a 4-year program, and so part of the responsibility is theirs. Sometimes their families as well. It just depends on the student. And I think student success centers to make sure students have the additional help they might need to make sure they progress through courses properly. And I think some of the campuses are looking at electronic systems to identify people at risk. And I think faculty, fundamentally in a classroom like I've been, have to be willing to, when they see a student who's struggling academically, they need to reach out to that person and just not let it kind of go. It's important that we graduate more people, not so much. Some of it's for the reward the unit will see, but it's also important to Tennessee. 21% of our adult population have 4-year degrees. The national average is probably in the 30% range. To have a trained workforce, because you can no longer work in a manufacturing job out of high school, is very, very important, not only to Tennessee and Tennessee businesses, but also to the people themselves. The average college graduate will have a starting salary $20,000 higher annually than a person with a high school diploma.
So is there any kind of incentive that you're offering for faculty if they do improve their...
That's an interesting question. I've really not thought about it. I think it might not hurt for our academic officers across the system to think about that. When we evaluate faculty for promotion or in their annual evaluations, we take a look at what students think of their teaching and what their peers think of their teaching. It might be interesting to see success rate as part of it in a course. That said, some disciplines are more rigorous than others, and some students find certain courses more challenging. And so if a professor happens to be teaching in that field, I'm not sure it's entirely equitable to weigh it on that. So I would leave it to our academic officers, provosts, and academic affairs people to figure that piece out along with their chancellors.
Is there any universities in the system that you're looking at to maybe model what the advisors need to do?
No, I think we do a pretty good job of that, frankly. I think we care a lot about our students at all our campuses, and particularly at Martin because, it's a smaller campus. There's a more personal touch associated with the classroom experience with a faculty member. It would seem that some of the things we could learn from Martin might have application at bigger places in the state.
How are we promoting the online courses?
We need to get better at that. To begin with, you can't simply say you're going to move everything to online. But I think there's some opportunities there we need to investigate. Largely, we've left the campuses to the business of promoting that. The Board of Trustees has an interest in online learning, and we need to look at how we might change our portfolio.
But what about the impersonal feeling of online courses? How do you improve that?
Well, I mean, some students like a classroom experience with a professor. There are others who learn better online at their own pace and at their own hour. And, you know, one might think that online is not very personal as compared to a classroom experience. But if the course is set up properly and there are the right number of people around the enrollment, you can have a pretty vigorous online experience that is at least electronic. It may not be in person.
With the growth of just the campus area, with more students comes crowding. How are we compensating for that?
Well, I guess I would laugh and say, if you think it's crowded here, come to Knoxville. You know, we're trying to figure out how to get the right housing in place around the campus. The university's looking at opportunities to figure out how to make sure we have a long-term plan for housing. I don't think UT Martin has a big expansion plan from the standpoint of enrollment. Right now, I think they could go 750 to 1,000 more students, but they've grown a lot in the last few years, and I'm sure the community's feeling it. You know, I think that the key is to make sure that our facility people, our business people, continue to lay a good plan.
How are we working with the state on things like, how often do you meet with Governor Haslam to talk to him about that? Do you meet with him at all?
Yeah, I meet with him. I mean, I can't, you know, I'm in contact with him often. It's not every day, but he knows my phone number and I know how to get a hold of him.
How important are the representatives to higher education?
Well, I think they're some of our strongest supporters, you know. I mean, I think that the distributed model of our campuses has power because we don't just have one location. Not only do we have campuses across the state, we have enterprises in all the counties too. So the delegation that's in the General Assembly is very important in advocating for the University of Tennessee. And, you know, I think they'd really like to do better by us, but they're caught in an economic downturn like a lot of our citizens are, and just can't, you know, aren't able to do what they'd like to do. I think they're a great asset.
What about the future of the UT system? How bright is that?
I think there's great upside potential. You know, we've been through some tough times. The economy's turning around. But, you know, the upside potential for the University of Tennessee is the fact that the citizens across the state care so much about it. And I felt that a lot in the last job because I was all over the state. I think the upside potential with our programs, particularly around energy, and the interest in people getting college degrees at quality places like Martin, make it have superb potential. All of our campuses have important roles. All of our institutes do, and it helps us be successful. And, you know, we're climbing. That's what I would tell people. We're on the right trajectory.
Graduation's right around the corner. You've got lots of graduates leaving the university system. What words would you like to say to them?
Well, I would tell them the same thing I've told all my children. You know, the most important thing about the next job you take or the next step in your education you take is that you're happy doing it. Life is too short to be unhappy doing something if you have alternatives. A college education offers up a lot of alternatives, and so I'd say, number one, find something that you are doing that's meaningful to you, that you like, and that for Joe, it's about helping people. And hopefully you're looking at passing on the need to make sure people understand higher education has value.
Thank you, Dr. DiPietro, and thank you for joining me for this edition of Weekly Word. I'm Benita Evans. Have a great week.
You have been listening to Weekly Word. If there is a campus event or someone you would like to hear interviewed on this program, contact the WUTM News Department at WUTMnews@UT.